In the world of WWE, where every move is carefully scripted and theatrical flair is part of the show, some names stand out for one simple reason: they were too real. These are the superstars known for hitting harder than anyone else, to the point where even their fellow wrestlers and backstage crews approached them with caution. Their strikes didn't just electrify the crowd, they often blurred the line between performance and genuine combat. Today, Wrestling Sphere invites you to dive into the stories of the stiffest, hardest-hitting wrestlers ever to step into a WWE ring, where intensity, controversy, and raw physicality collided beyond the boundaries of sports entertainment. 1. Gunther, the chest-shattering nightmare. When it comes to WWE superstars who strike fear into their opponents before even throwing a punch, Gunther is always at the top of the list. A former Intercontinental Champion, Gunther is known not just for his imposing physique and stoic demeanor, but for his brutally stiff wrestling style, especially his infamous chops that have become the stuff of legend. These aren't just loud slaps to the chest, they're thunderous blows that echo through arenas, send shivers down spines, and leave opponents' torsos swollen, bruised, and sometimes even purple. Every time Gunther unleashes one of his signature chops, it sounds like a whip cracking against flesh. The crack reverberates across the arena, drawing gasps from the audience and pained grimaces from the man receiving it. More often than not, matches involving Gunther end with his opponent gasping for breath, wincing in agony, and walking away with a chest that looks like it's been scorched. What may look like a simple strike is actually packed with devastating force, something few have the guts to endure more than once. Gunther doesn't win by speed or flashy offense. He wins with precision, weight, and intent. Every move he makes is deliberate, every blow real. There's no playing it safe in his arsenal. And that's exactly why so many who've stepped into the ring with him openly admit the pain lingers long after the match ends. Some even say it takes a full week just to physically recover. What's even more remarkable is that Gunther doesn't hide his punishing style. In fact, he embraces it. For him, fighting hard is a form of respect. It's about making the match worth watching, about elevating both himself and his opponent by bringing intensity and authenticity. That level of honesty and sheer intensity has earned him both admiration and avoidance. After all, not everyone is eager to go toe-to-toe with a man who sees no point in pulling punches. Gunther isn't some reckless brute. He's a professional through and through, someone who holds the integrity of the match above all else. And if that means unleashing strikes that make audiences wince and leave wrestlers battered, then so be it. He'll do it every time, without hesitation. 2. Hardcore Holly, the Iron Fist of the Ruthless Era. Hardcore Holly, his name alone became a symbol of WWE's most brutal era. There was nothing coincidental about his nickname, Hardcore. Throughout the 1990s, Holly carved out a reputation as a gritty warrior who stepped into the ring with an unforgiving style and a complete willingness to unleash punishing strikes. He didn't rely on flashy looks or theatrical gimmicks. His no-nonsense, straight-up combat spoke volumes on its own. While some backstage peers once labeled Holly a bully to fans, he represented something far more rare in the world of sports entertainment: toughness and authenticity. Every move he delivered didn't just hurt his opponent, it sent chills down the spines of those watching. His matches often ended in bone-jarring impacts that left audiences holding their breath, even if there were no official knockouts on the record. One of the most talked about and controversial moments of Holly's career came during his appearance on the reality show Tough Enough, where he squared off against trainee Matt Capitale. In that now infamous session, every strike from Holly was sharp, stiff, and unrelenting. At one point, viewers genuinely believed Matt had been knocked senseless. Holly would later admit that things might have gone further than originally intended. "I was just doing what I always do," he once said, reflecting on the incident. Holly emphasized that the infamous kick was actually an accident, caused by his boot catching Matt at the wrong moment. He expressed genuine regret, insisting he never intended to hurt the young wrestler, whom he remains on good terms with to this day. What truly set Holly apart wasn't just his raw power, it was his incredible resilience. He once broke his neck during a live broadcast, and suffered countless other injuries over the years. But for Holly, wrestling was never just a job, it was a battlefield. And on that battlefield, he never backed down. 3. Goldberg, the unhinged wrecking machine of the ring. Goldberg, a name that's almost impossible to leave out when talking about the most heavy-handed wrestlers in WWE history. A former powerlifter with a brief stint in MMA, Goldberg possessed such an imposing physique that WCW pushed him straight into the spotlight, despite his lack of formal wrestling training. That bold decision laid the foundation for both his meteoric rise and the ongoing controversies that would follow him throughout his career. Goldberg earned a reputation for stiff, unforgiving offense, not out of malice, but due to a lack of technical refinement. He embodied raw, untamed power, explosive, intense, and often uncontrollable. That very intensity made his strikes feel real, but also dangerously unpredictable. To cover up his technical shortcomings, WCW booked him in short, high-impact matches with simple layouts, usually ending quickly with signature finishers like the devastating spear or jackhammer. But that lack of control would eventually lead to one of the most controversial moments in wrestling history: the infamous kick at Starrcade 1999 that caused Bret Hart to suffer a severe concussion. The consequences were far-reaching. It wasn't just an injury. It ultimately brought an early end to the career of one of WWE's most respected legends. Since that day, Bret Hart has publicly criticized Goldberg on multiple occasions, and their relationship has remained fractured beyond repair. To be clear, Goldberg was never a bad performer. On the contrary, he had undeniable star power and was the centerpiece of one of WCW's most memorable undefeated streaks. But he also stands as a stark example of what can go wrong when someone without proper training is thrown into a sport that demands precision, timing, and safety above all else. In Goldberg's case, the strength was very real, but so was the danger that came with it. 4. China, when power outshines precision. In the conversation about WWE Superstars known for being stiff in the ring, China stands out as a unique case. Unlike others who earned that label through aggressive intent or hard-hitting wrestling styles, China was considered heavy-handed for a very different reason. She was never particularly skilled in technical execution. Dubbed the ninth wonder of the world, China was an irreplaceable figure during WWE's golden era. She shattered every mold set for female wrestlers, stepping far beyond the boundaries of what was expected or accepted at the time. Her legacy includes one of the most groundbreaking achievements in wrestling history, becoming the first, and so far only, woman to win the Intercontinental Championship, a title traditionally held by male competitors. It was a moment that redefined what women could accomplish in the industry. But behind the trailblazing image lay a reality that many within the business acknowledged. China's in-ring skills had their limitations. She was strong, imposing, and captivating, but her movements often lacked the fluidity and precision expected at the top level. Her strikes could come off heavier than necessary, not out of malice, but because she simply hadn't yet mastered the control that comes with experience. Chris Jericho, one of WWE's most respected veterans, once openly admitted that he wasn't entirely comfortable working matches with China. For him, their bouts often felt out of sync. She struggled to fully control her timing and positioning, which led to moves that landed harder than intended. It wasn't intentional. It was the product of someone still learning, still evolving inside the squared circle. Even so, China's impact is undeniable. She may never have been a technical expert, but she remains one of the most iconic female wrestlers of all time. Her charisma, fearlessness, and unwavering drive pushed her into territories no other woman had dared to explore. And perhaps, it was that very rawness, the unpolished, powerful edge to her presence, that made her so unforgettable. In a world where perfection is often manufactured, China was real. Flawed, bold, and deeply inspiring, a true warrior who didn't need to be perfect to be legendary. 5. Lowkey, the uncompromising fighter in a choreographed world. When the topic of stiff wrestlers comes up, those known for hitting hard and holding nothing back, Lowkey is one of the first names that enters the conversation. A former TNA standout, Lowkey gained a reputation not only for his intense, no-nonsense demeanor, but also for the kind of offense that genuinely left opponents wary. His strikes weren't for show, they were punishing, precise, and very, very real. To Lowkey, professional wrestling has never been mere performance. For him, it's a combat art, a discipline that blends strength, technique, and a deep respect for the opponent, expressed through every strike. His unique style fused traditional wrestling fundamentals with brutal MMA-inspired attacks, clean, explosive, and unapologetically stiff. There was no space for pulling punches in Lowkey's matches, just impact, intention, and authenticity. Long before stepping into WWE's system, Lowkey had already built a strong name for himself across the independent circuit. One infamous example of his approach came during a match in Evolve, where he knocked out an opponent with a single vicious kick. The knockout was real, not scripted, and yet, the match continued. That chilling moment perfectly embodied Lowkey's style. Raw, unforgiving, and absolutely devoid of theatrics. With blistering speed and an execution style that felt more like a martial artist than a pro wrestler, many wondered why Lowkey didn't simply pursue a career in MMA. The way he delivered his strikes, especially his kicks, felt like something out of the octagon, not the squared circle. His legs became his most feared weapon. Some even described them as walking nightmares, capable of ending matches and careers in a flash. But with that intensity came controversy. Lowkey's unwillingness to soften his approach made him a polarizing figure in the locker room. Some saw him as reckless, others as a purist refusing to compromise the integrity of his craft. Regardless of opinion, one fact remains undisputed. Lowkey is living proof that in a world where so much is scripted, there are still those who choose to fight for real. 6. JBL, the cowboy whose clothesline struck fear in everyone. When it comes to WWE's most notoriously stiff performers, those who hit so hard that even their peers grew cautious, John Bradshaw Layfield, better known as JBL, is a name that stands front and center. Though he's a former WWE champion and a bona fide star in the industry, JBL's legacy isn't defined solely by titles or accolades. Instead, much of it is tied to his rough, punishing style, one so intense that many backstage referred to him as an infamous locker room bully. There was even a rumor circulating for years. Facing JBL in the ring wasn't just a match, it was a punishment. Stories spread that Vince McMahon would deliberately pair certain rookies with JBL to teach them a lesson. The tale gained credibility as more wrestlers recalled brutal encounters with him, especially those still finding their footing. JBL didn't hold back. His strikes were heavy, his grapples stiff, and his ring presence intimidating. For many, stepping into the ring with him felt like entering a storm. JBL himself has admitted to working stiff, a wrestling term meaning he hit with real force. He even confessed that his infamous clothesline from hell came in two versions, a standard one for those he liked, and a far more brutal variation for those he didn't. That small detail alone explains why many opponents walked away from their matches with JBL not just physically battered, but emotionally drained as well. But JBL wasn't always the one dishing out the pain. Throughout his career, he also faced the consequences of his aggressive nature. Notably, he once got knocked out backstage by Steve Blackman, who didn't take kindly to JBL's antics. It was a reminder that even the stiffest hands eventually meet their match. JBL came up in an era where real, hard-hitting action was part of the locker room culture. That environment shaped his identity in the ring. Gritty, unrelenting, and unapologetically tough. Whether praised or criticized, JBL left behind a legacy built not just on championships, but on the kind of bone-jarring impact you don't forget. 7. Shinsuke Nakamura, when strong style turns the ring into a real battlefield. Shinsuke Nakamura isn't just a star from Japan. He's the living embodiment of strong style, a wrestling philosophy where every strike, kick, knee, or elbow is delivered with real impact, real speed, and yes, real pain. With Nakamura in the ring, the line between performance and reality begins to blur, transforming each match into something that feels more like a fight than a scripted contest. Back in his NJPW days, Nakamura built his name on devastating moves like the Kinshasa, a flying knee strike that could leave opponents seeing stars if they didn't brace correctly. And when he transitioned to WWE, he didn't water anything down. Fans quickly noticed that his signature intensity followed him across continents. It wasn't uncommon to see Nakamura's opponents lying on the mat, dazed and bruised, after eating one of his precision-perfect knees straight to the face. What makes Nakamura unique is that he's not reckless, far from it. His execution is sharp, calculated, and rooted in control. But strong style isn't about being safe or soft. It's about intensity, emotion, and authenticity. For those unfamiliar with this approach, stepping into the ring with Nakamura can feel overwhelming, even jarring. It's not because he wants to hurt anyone, it's because he commits fully to the art, and his art demands realism. Several wrestlers have admitted it took them time to adjust to Nakamura's style. But once they found their rhythm, they gained a deep respect for him. Because behind the stiffness was a professional who gave everything he had, not to dominate or injure, but to elevate the match into something unforgettable. That's what sets Nakamura apart. He's a warrior with the soul of an artist. He might not be stiff in the malicious sense, but underestimate him, and you'll find out just how real his strikes feel. In the world of WWE, where many hits are pulled and softened, Nakamura's commitment to strong style stands out as a powerful reminder. Sometimes, wrestling isn't just performance, it's passion, delivered knee first. 8. William Regal, where finesse meets steel. William Regal is the kind of wrestler who commands respect, not through overwhelming size or flashy, high-impact finishers, but by mastering the art of controlled violence. He wasn't feared for being a brute. He was feared for knowing exactly how hard to hit, how long to hold, and how to walk the line between intensity and safety with surgical precision. While beloved by fans, Regal never shied away from admitting one thing. He hit hard, very hard, but always within reason and always with purpose. His style was distinct. Regal didn't throw strikes to impress the crowd. He threw them to make his opponent feel every inch of them. His chops could leave your chest stinging for the rest of the match, and his trademark uppercuts and jaw cranks were often delivered with a force that made opponents dizzy, like they were fighting a boss character straight out of Mortal Kombat. Regal was the definition of a versatile technician. He could grapple and out-wrestle nearly anyone on the mat, but he was just as willing to go toe-to-toe in stiff brawls with the toughest strikers in the world. A prime example: his infamous match with Bill Goldberg on the February 9, 1998 episode of WCW Nitro, a controversial moment that still sparks debate today. Originally scripted as a squash match to showcase Goldberg's dominance, the plans changed behind the scenes. Regal was instructed to give Goldberg a more competitive showing. So he did just that, locking in tight holds, delivering punishing forearms, and refusing to simply roll over. What was meant to be a showcase for Goldberg turned into an awkward contest where the unstoppable force looked suddenly human, even clumsy. Though Goldberg ultimately won, his aura took a hit. Regal, on the other hand, paid a price. He was released from WCW shortly after. But when he joined WWE, he refined his approach while still preserving that same brutal edge. If his opponent could handle it, especially names like Chris Benoit or Fit Finlay, Regal wouldn't hold back. In those matches, he let loose, turning the ring into a clinic of raw power and expert technique. William Regal proved that you didn't have to be the biggest or the flashiest to make an impact. Sometimes, the sharpest weapon is precision, and Regal wielded it better than most, refined, ruthless, and always real. 9. King Kong Bundy, the giant who never held back. In the world of WWE, where trust, timing, and cooperation are essential, King Kong Bundy was the kind of opponent who could make any night inside the ring feel like survival. Towering in size and unrelenting in style, Bundy wasn't just a big man. He was a walking nightmare for anyone standing in the opposite corner. Even Hulk Hogan, the ultimate icon of WWE, once suffered a rib injury after a brutal clash with Bundy. That fact alone says plenty about the kind of punishment Bundy dished out with every collision. Another veteran, Hillbilly Jim, openly admitted that every time he stepped into the ring with Bundy, it felt like being steamrolled. According to him, wrestling Bundy wasn't just a match, it was an endurance test. Off camera, Bundy wasn't a controversial figure or someone with a difficult personality. But the moment the bell rang, he transformed into a destructive force worthy of the King Kong moniker. His name wasn't just a gimmick, it was a promise. And naturally, someone billed as a monster wasn't going to wrestle like a gentle giant. What's striking is that despite his stiff, punishing style, which often resulted in real pain for his opponents, Bundy earned widespread respect. Even Hulk Hogan, despite suffering an injury, later described their feud as one of the most compelling rivalries of his career. That says a lot. Bundy wasn't just a stiff worker, he was a legitimate threat who could elevate the drama and intensity of any match he was in. Though he never captured a major WWE title, King Kong Bundy left a lasting legacy. His presence, his power, and his willingness to throw himself into every fight without hesitation made him an unforgettable figure during WWE's golden era. In a time when pain and performance often went hand in hand, Bundy embodied both, showing that sometimes, greatness isn't measured by championships, but by the impact you leave behind, and the bruises you leave on your opponents. 10. The Dynamite Kid, a blazing talent in a brutal style. Tom Billington, better known to the wrestling world as the Dynamite Kid, was the embodiment of a man who refused to settle for mediocrity. Though he didn't possess the towering physique of some of his peers, He more than made up for it with blistering speed, raw strength, and breathtaking aerial agility. Dynamite Kid wasn't just a performer, he was a pioneer. His explosive blend of high-impact technical wrestling and daring high-flying moves laid the foundation for a style decades ahead of its time. But that same intensity that made him a revolutionary also made him one of the most feared men backstage. In the ring, Dynamite Kid didn't hold back. His strikes landed with bone-rattling force, and his aggressive style often left opponents nursing real injuries. His approach to wrestling was notoriously stiff, so much so that it sometimes crossed the line between professional performance and outright brutality. To many, he wasn't just a tough competitor, he was a genuine bully. Mick Foley once recalled a chilling memory on Broken Skull sessions involving the Dynamite Kid. During a routine spot, Foley was thrown high into the air and met with a devastating clothesline mid-fall. The blow was so powerful it dislocated his jaw and left him in numbing pain, while Dynamite stood nearby, smirking coldly. For Dynamite, it was just another day at work. For Foley, it was something much harder to shake off. And Mick Foley wasn't the only one. Wrestlers like Jacques Rougeau and even Dynamite's ex-wife have spoken, or been the subject of stories, about troubling encounters with him. Outside the ring, he developed a reputation for being abrasive, volatile, and difficult to work with, especially during times when substance abuse clouded his behavior. Yet for all the fear he inspired, Dynamite Kid's talent was undeniable. He was a wrestling genius whose influence can still be felt in the modern era. But he also serves as a sobering reminder. When passion and intensity go unchecked, they can blur into something far more dangerous, turning inspiration into intimidation and leaving behind a legacy both admired and feared. 11. Brock Lesnar, the uncontainable storm inside the ring. Mention the name Brock Lesnar, and the image that instantly comes to mind is that of a hulking force of nature, muscle-packed, fast as a predator, and just as merciless. Lesnar isn't merely a wrestler. When he enters the ring, he becomes a living embodiment of pure, unfiltered violence. With his cold, calculated demeanor and explosive power, every match feels less like a performance and more like a battlefield. Lesnar made his mark through devastating German suplexes, executed with the precision of a machine, and his signature F5, a move so powerful it often left opponents dazed, barely able to continue. His in-ring dominance and punishing style quickly earned him the label of a stiff worker, a man who never holds back when it comes to physical impact. But unlike others who hit hard out of carelessness or lack of control, Lesnar is exact. Every move is intentional, every blow delivered with pinpoint timing. The problem? His actions are so fast and forceful that even when technically perfect, the damage is all too real. Case in point, his infamous match against Braun Strowman at the Royal Rumble, where Lesnar responded to an overly stiff knee strike with a legitimate punch to the face that left Braun visibly rattled. Or the brutal SummerSlam showdown with Randy Orton, which ended with Lesnar raining down elbow strikes so vicious that Orton bled heavily and required staples to close the wound. These moments sparked a larger conversation among fans and wrestlers alike. Was Lesnar still playing by the script, or was he simply fighting for real? Many backstage at WWE have admitted they feel genuine anxiety when booked to face him. It's not just the raw power, they fear his unrelenting style, his refusal to dilute his intensity for anyone. Yet, it's precisely this ferocity that sets Brock Lesnar apart. In a world built on illusion, Lesnar brings something dangerously real. He's the rare superstar whose presence alone changes the energy of a match, and whose unpredictability turns every bout into a war. Brock Lesnar isn't just feared because he's strong. He's feared because he's real. And sometimes, being too good and too real is what makes you the most terrifying man in the ring. Who impressed you the most on this list? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and follow Wrestling Sphere so you won't miss any of our upcoming exciting videos.